I'm Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Great. Well, I think that do we have everybody? Lauren, do you have the list? Okay, good. Well, we're recording this meeting so that we can get it up on our Act 73 Ward Working Group page on the Secretary of State's office website. Thank you so much for joining this working group, and I expect that we'll run through the agenda fairly quickly today. And, spoiler alert, there's not a ton for us to do at this moment because we can't create wards in school districts that don't yet exist. So we will be watching carefully the work of the task force, and when they start to solidify around some map proposals, we can reconvene and begin to do some work. So for now, what I'd like to do is just do a little set of introductions so that everybody knows everybody. I'm Sarah Copeland-Hanzas, Vermont Secretary of State. I think that the reason that I'm here is because I have some experience doing redistricting in the legislative context. And so when the legislature was creating this plan to move to larger school districts and create new school district wards within those districts, they were looking for somebody who could lead the process of ward apportionment. And I think it's really great that we have a combination of school leaders as well as town clerks who understand how elections work to be a part of the ward apportionment process. And so it's an honor to be working with you all on this project. And I will kick it over to Mark Koenig for a little introduction. Where are you from? Why were you interested in being a part of this group?
So my name is Mark Koenig. I am in Vergennes. I am the chair of the Addison Northwest School Board. I've also been deeply involved with public school stuff for the last few years. I'm co-chair of the Public School Employee Healthcare Commission. I helped design the governance standards for school boards. I also on my city council. I do things, and VSBA knows they can come to me as somebody who's been watching all of the hearings, both the future of education and the new redistricting. So I'm kind of in the mix, and so they said, "Hey, we
Wonderful.
would like you to continue doing this." So here I am for more fun.
Thank you. Marlon.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Marlon Versami. I live in Essex Junction. I am the vice chair of the Essex Westford School Board. For me, also a day job, I'm a forecaster of the National Weather Service. So I'm in my office right now, even though we're technically shut down at the moment. Yeah, no, for me, in the last few years I've been on the board, I've done this work for 4 years now. Our board in particular has been very deeply involved, not just with stuff for our district, but with districts around Chittenden County, and then kind of work across the state too. So for me, being able to represent folks across our county, especially with a very highly diverse population we have here in Chittenden County, who want to really be a part of this work to make sure that a lot of underrepresented and underserved communities were their voices were at this table here. So super excited to be part of this work. Really happy to be here. And yeah, looking forward to what we do over the next few months.
Welcome. Diana.
Hi, my name is Diana Vachon. I am the Shelburne Town Clerk. I've been here about 9 years now and running elections for 9 years and looking forward to helping us move forward. Thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. Kathy.
Hi there, my name's Kathy Sarder. I'm the town clerk in Sharon, Vermont, representing small town. Previous life was about 23 years in training and development. So here I am to support the group and just be part of it. So thank you. And I apologize. I have a scanner going off behind me, so I'm going to turn off my mic.
Well, I have a cat galloping around behind me, so I'll apologize in advance for that as well. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mason. I'm the town clerk here in Williston, which I've been doing for 5 years, but I've been here as assistant clerk since 2012. And like Diana, I guess we're here to sort of lend some insight to what is going on election night itself, you know, where we are, where these school district ballots are going to go and how that's going to work. Right now, we're 5 towns that feed to CVU, and that sometimes seems like a lot. So trying to wrap my head around how it will look when it's going to be quite different. I did go through reapportionment and redistricting here in Williston in 2021 when our 1 district had to become 2. So I'm a little familiar with the process. Wouldn't say I have a lot of experience in that part, but I think, like I said, we're here to lend the insight of how this will sort of shake down on the ground on an election evening. And I think, as Marlon had said, how are these going to come together? So again, I'm happy to be here, happy to lend a little insight. Don't think I have a lot of expertise, but Diane invited me and I like to say yes.
Well, thank you for saying yes.
Sure.
And rounding out the working group, John.
Hi, folks. I'm John Adams, director at the Center for Geographic Information, and this is Dylan Broderick, my colleague here. I am on the group because the legislation said I would be. It's interesting. Typically, you know, we're tasked with supporting this group, and we were also tasked with supporting this group. So we're on it and supporting it. I'm not sure that will change our role. We're here to support everyone here and make your lives as easy as possible from a data and mapping perspective. We're also tasked with supporting the task force, the school redistricting task force.
Yeah.
There are task force work groups and committees, but so we've been following that and build some tools for them to help their work, and we'll be building off of those and presenting you with a few ideas and looking forward to getting your feedback on those. I don't have any background really in education policy, but I did work in municipalities some time ago, 20 years ago, did work in Williston and worked in Shelburne after that.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
Lauren.
As the secretary said, I'm Lauren Hibbert. I'm the deputy secretary. Happy to be here. Very excited to dork out with you guys on elections and wards.
And Brian.
Hey, good morning. Brian Mills, Chief of Staff for the Secretary. Excited to be here. This is a great group, and I look forward to hearing more and learning more.
Thanks for being here. So the very simple agenda that we put together has us spending a few minutes reviewing our charge, and so I have pulled up the legislation that outlines what this working group is supposed to do, and then we will give John and Dylan a few minutes to talk about some of the tools that VCGI has created, and I'm sure that they will run us through where those tools are located and a bit about how they work. And then after we've done that, I will give you a little update of what I know from the work of the districting task force. We just met with the co-chairs of the districting task force earlier this morning. And then to round out the meeting, we can talk about what this group has in mind in terms of future meetings. And I think that all of the agenda items will help us to you know, to have a sense of where we want to go from here. So to review the charge of the committee, and I just wanted to let you know that we have set up, we've set up a page with resources and minutes and all of that on the Secretary of State's page under our municipal division. I'm going to put a link to that in the meeting chat right now, so that you can all take a look at the page. It has the current meeting agenda as well as the membership of the working group. And as we go along, that's where we will put future meeting dates, future meeting agendas, meeting minutes, recordings of meetings, so that it'll be a place for this committee to you know, to access information, but also a place where ordinary Vermonters can follow and participate in the process. The meeting minutes and the legislative language will be added to this Act 73 page on the Secretary of State's website. It's not up there yet. We're sort of building this plane while we fly it, but it will get there eventually. So the legislation directs the creation of this group, and thank you all for being willing to be appointed by your either by the legislature or by your respective organizations. We are tasked with on or before October 15th to consult with the school district task force to gain an understanding of the work of the task force, and to understand when they may have one or more school district boundary proposals that we could begin working with. We are tasked with following the principles of apportionment that are followed by the Legislative Apportionment Board, and we can dive more deeply into what those are at future meetings. And we are to make recommendations to the General Assembly to achieve voting districts within each school district that are compact, contiguous, and drawn to achieve substantially equal weighting of votes that meet the requirements of applicable state and federal law. When the task force gets to the point where they are focusing on one proposal, or when the General Assembly begins its work to pass the school district boundaries into law, then we will need to come back to the General Assembly with a recommendation on the optimal number of school board members per school district to maximize public representation and democratic input while maintaining effective board size. So, you know, I think that generally school boards are best when they have an odd number of folks, so that we don't have the possibility of a tie vote. And generally, you know, between 5 and 11 school board members is probably ideal, although Mark and Marlon may have experience with larger boards. But at any rate, this group should be planning to make a recommendation on the size of the school boards that will be created when the legislature moves a plan to create larger school districts. We also are tasked with recommending boundaries for these voting boards within each school district, and including detailed maps that show the ward boundaries. And one part of this in the legislation that I think is really important is that we try to the greatest extent possible to make sure that the school district wards respect current municipal boundaries as much as possible. And I say this from the logistics of elections administration standpoint, that if we get into slicing and dicing communities, it gets really complicated really fast, and that can lead to unnecessary errors and complications in how we do that election night reporting. So when we get to the point where we're creating wards, you know, the legislature has tasked us with respecting current municipal boundaries to the greatest extent possible. The working group will have administrative, technical, and legal assistance from my office, technical assistance from the Agency of Digital Services. That's the Vermont Center for Geographic Information. That's John and Dylan. Thank you very much. And we can contract for services as necessary to carry out our duties. So I'm tasked with calling the first meeting on or before October 1st. Welcome to October. Here we are. I am tasked with being the chair of this group, and I want you all to know that you can reach out to me at any time via email or in person, or ask for a virtual meeting if you have suggestions or concerns about the way the group is organizing itself, or if you have ideas for things that we should or could do as a group. I'm leading this just because I was told to, but I don't need to be the final word on the direction that we go in this group. The legislation specifies that the working group shall cease to exist on June 30th, 2026, which is a very aggressive timeline, I'll be honest with you, from what I understand about how the districting task force is coming together. It is not entirely clear to me that that we will have had the opportunity to act on the actual school district boundaries to create wards before June 30th, but this is the aggressive timeline that the legislature is attempting to work under, and so we should do our best to act as quickly as possible when those school district boundaries are set. Compensation and reimbursement. You are all entitled to per diem compensation if you are not being paid by your by your current employer for your attendance at these meetings. And so that is something that we can figure out for each of you who may want to ask for per diem compensation. Please reach out to me offline, and we can talk about that. My office has an appropriation for this working group, so that if we need to contract for other technical support or services, we can, and to cover those per diems. And we also have an appropriation that we can lean on if we need to contract for software or other resources to create the voting wards. So that is the charge of this working group. And are there any questions? No. All right. Excellent. Well, now is the time in our agenda where we will kick this over to John and Dylan to talk about some of the resources that they have created that will ultimately help us to create wards within school districts. So John and Dylan.
Great, thank you. So I'll start maybe by just giving a quick overview of the tools that we've put together for the redistricting task force. And then I would propose that we put together a custom tool for this group, which we've started to put into development, and would love ideas or feedback. If any of you do have ideas or feedback, or would like to jump on a call and get a more detailed walkthrough or tutorial on any of these tools, or let's say you do have ideas for some software or web app that you'd like us to look into, please let us know. What we're planning to build for this will be, custom development for the ward for this working group. So your ideas are certainly welcome, and if we can do it, great. If it's something that's possible, we'll let you know. But by all means, put your ideas out there. So I'll if you go to map.vermont.gov/education, it'll bring you to this page where we have a couple of these applications. The idea, the concept, I think the way I would think about these is we have the Explorer and the Builder. The Explorer, I'll start with here, is where we can put in as many map layers as you can think of. So right now, as the redistricting task force requests more information, we continue to add different layers here. So if there's anything at all you'd like to see on a map, let us know, whether it's, you know, details around terrain and elevation, or population distribution, or, you know, traffic, or existing boundaries or school districts. It's all, if it exists, it's pretty easy and quick for us to add all of this information. The Builder, this is a custom tool that anyone can access and build their districts from existing municipalities. So you can go and select a district and start adding towns to it, and it will calculate some of these metrics on the fly here. You can also build it from supervisory unions, you know, or there are some configurations, some pre-existing configurations that you can start with and then edit. And then when you generate a report, it provides, in this instance, some of the metrics that group is required to report on. It also has some built-in information around schools as you select some of those. As you build your districts, you can also create if you click this copy shareable link, it'll give you a link of the configuration that you created, and you can share it with anyone. Or if members of the public are interested, they can, you know, create their own and copy link and share that to provide example or feedback. So this is the tool that was put together for the redistricting task force. Our thought was to build something similar, and this is just a very rough early prototype. But for this group, in that we would have the 3 or however many proposals baked into the app that the redistricting task force comes up with. As a placeholder, we've just put in here, you know, county, RPC, or school board association. And the idea being, you know, you would select that. Let's take Washington for an example. Here are all the towns in Washington. You could select, by default here, we have this populated with 7 wards. You can, you know, remove or add more here. And what this does right now is it takes the total number of students and it divides it by however many wards that you have. And that gives you the ideal per member. And in the world we've worked in supporting the Legislative Apportionment Board, some of the language they use, which may sound a little weird, but they talk about deviation from ideal. So if you hear me saying that, that's where that language comes from. And they during that process, there's a fairly narrow band that they have to work with from that deviation. In Vermont, I think, you know, it's between 4,000 and 5,000 people per member with our house districts, since there's 150 of them. So that doesn't give you a very big window. I think our number of House and Senate members are the same in Vermont as they are in Texas and Florida and California. So it's a very different story over there. If we had the same number of same population per member, I think the same representatives per population, we would, as Texas, for example, we would have 3 House members and half of a state senator. So 10% of 1 million is much bigger than 10% of 4,000. Anyhow, the idea behind this is you could select your ward. Let's say we add Montpelier, and then it can tell you, where we've set this bar here. I forget what percent. It may be like a 25 or 50% deviation from ideal. But we can configure that however we'd like, and then you can then build your wards from that. And if you select multiple towns, it'll add those up. And then, we could then, generate a report with summary statistics on, deviation from ideal or any other things that the working group thinks would be helpful or informative. So this one is not online yet, still very much a work in progress, but I thought give you a preview of that and maybe ask the group if this is a good direction to head in, if this would be helpful, or if there are any other thoughts or ideas around how we can best support this work.
Feel free to raise your hand or unmute if you have questions or ideas, suggestions. Go ahead,
So
Diana.
just to, so when it is, we can go on and just play with that and just make up different wards and see. And anybody can do that? Is it public or is it just for this group?
The idea is that anybody can do it. It's public. You don't need any kind of login. We're trying to make it as simple as possible so someone doesn't need, any kind of special expertise or need to download any software. Right now, if you want to build your own school districts, you can go do that. The ward builder is not live yet. That is a work in progress, and I guess I'm putting it. If this group doesn't think that's a good idea, we can take this in a different direction. But I thought it'd be helpful to present this to you so that you can visualize or start to understand what's possible, and then let us know if that's a good direction to head in, and if that's something you'd like us to refine and work on.
Marlon.
So when you go in and
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diana.
So when you go in and use it, you would print the report and then it doesn't save anything. So like the next time I went in and the previous stuff wouldn't be there, right? It would be like a clean slate every time.
You can save it, like right now for the district builder, you can save it a number of different ways. You can copy that URL, and that'll give you a long URL that gives the application instructions on how you configure things. And that's if you want to share it with someone, say, hey, check out the configuration I made, and you can share that with anyone. Or you can then download, right now for the district builder, it lists, the town and the districts that you've assigned it to, or you can export it as a map file as well.
Thank you.
Looks like a very helpful tool, fun to play with. Marlon.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And John, thank you for sharing that. I got a chance to play with your maps before with the Redistricting Task Force, and I think really good data on there. One thing I think, especially when we start to build these maps and talk about this with the public, I love the idea of focusing students on there. I think that's extremely important. I would also make sure that in that data, we can also look at what are the number of voters in those wards too, specifically to compare and contrast, because I know, especially in my district, having two larger towns with a Junction and Essex Town, along with a smaller town in Westford, community members have already brought that to me as a concern they have. They want to make sure that there's, want to make sure students are equally represented. We also make sure that the voters are also equally represented. And then I think if we have that philosophy, are we focusing on making sure the students come first in this year, or are we making sure the voters come first? I think we want to have data behind that and then be able to back up why we went in one direction or the other. So having that attached to that data, I think would be a really good start to help us really be able to again, compare and contrast and see which direction we want to go when we build these wards. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I was actually, we were intending to put the like that calculation would be on the actual population, because that's what is that is what's done in redistricting, legislative reapportionment. And I think that's what our charge is. Right now, since we already had the piece with the students built, that's what we just put as a placeholder. But that's a great point. And we can also include both on those statistics that we report out on. But I do think that the application is likely, or that we should probably put population in as the primary metric in the tool if we are going to use the principles of the legislative reapportionment or follow their model.
No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I really appreciate it. And I think, again, to also think about like with rural districts, we have some areas, especially like Northeast Kingdom, that have population, but they have a lot of students. So I think that those questions are going to come up from folks across the state of, well, how are they being represented in these districts, especially when they're being told that, you know, they're paying taxes for them? Because that's, again, we have that in most communities where we have a lot of folks that don't have kids in school anymore. They're being charged for it. They want to understand, like, how are they being represented at the table? So I really appreciate that thinking. And I think that, again, I love the idea of being student focused and being student forward. I think, again, being able to show community members, hey, you are being represented, but maybe we might be going in this direction. And again, not trying to say we're going one or the other right now, but I think that whenever we make that decision of which route we want to go down, I think we want to be able to justify and be able to show communities why we chose the route we did, but also show them how they're being represented in both avenues, whether it be student or community members, voters. So yeah, just again, I really appreciate that. I love that approach, and so I think again, there's a lot we can play in there with. So I'm excited to see as we, you know, as you guys are able to build that out and where we can go with that. So thank you.
Great, Mark.
Just a quick question. I may have missed it when you were going over all the different layers, but is one of the layers like the current map for voting for House reps or House senators, so that we can see where the borders are as it is right now for town clerks to have to create? I agree that we don't want to cut into existing ones if we don't have to, because it does. I'm on my city council, and so I do election night every year, and then you get to the school boards, and it's like, are they commingled or are they not? Do we need to go here? We have the tech center vote that needs to be driven down to it. It becomes quite the logistical nightmare, and I don't want to add to that mess.
Yeah, right. Currently, there are no voting wards or House or Senate boundaries in that application. It's pretty easy. We do have those. We can easily add them. But I think also a great point about not wanting to add too much confusion, or it may not be the creating the House districts for Vermont. There were a lot of constraints, which I think does cause the cutting up of towns, which ideally I think we can avoid doing. But yes, they're not on there now. But we can definitely add them very easily.
Great. And I'll just give a warning to anybody who hasn't played with the redistricting map. Set aside some time, because it can be a real time sink. You just start playing with it. You're like, oh, I'll click this one. And what happens if I do this? And suddenly an hour has gone.
Yep, it's fun to geek out with the maps for sure. I think with respect to being able to refer to House districts, I think that may be very helpful when we get down to looking at final districting proposals and creating wards within them, because in the event that we do need to, sorry, that's my cat climbing around. In the event that we find that we have school districts that are going to force us to make divisions within municipalities, then I would recommend very strongly that any division that's within a municipality at least follow the legislative district that is within that municipality, so that we don't end up with, you know, a legislative district that divides the community this way and a school district that divides the community this way, where now we have 4 different ballot types in, you know, in a particular municipality. That just becomes really crazy and chaotic for clerks and for our election management system. And, you know, we've already seen it, you know, in a scenario where it makes it difficult to ensure that voters are in their appropriate districts. And now John's
and I
going to show us something new.
Well, this was just a thought I had around to try to keep this simple around, you know, focused on municipalities, but also allow for some flexibility. Right now, the thought I had was, you know, you could toggle on, you could add multiple members to a town, right? And that's not to say like it's a good, I don't know if you want to have multiple at large or if you want to split it out, but for the purposes of this application, the approach was we leave it at the municipality. You have the option to add multiple members per town, and those metrics all adjust accordingly here.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Super. Any other questions from committee members about the tools? Wonderful. John, I don't know if you have the ability to pop the link to that page on your resources just into the meeting link here, and then we can get links to that put up on the Act 73 working group page on our Secretary of State site, just so that anybody who's following along with us can easily find the resources that we're talking about. I'm also going to pop in the chat right now the Agency of Administration link to the task force resources page. The school redistricting task force is under the Agency of Administration, and so that's where that web page can be found. But again, we'll link to that from our Act 73 page as well, just so that we're tying all of these things together so that Vermonters can follow along, and so that those of us who are in this working group can have a one-stop spot to access all of these different resources. Okay, so are there any other questions? Oh, right. Thank you, John. John is saying that the ward builder is still in process, but the school district builder is on there, and so you can fritter away many hours on a gray, rainy day this fall playing with the school districting builder, and I think what you'll find is that will come in handy when it comes time to start using a ward builder, because I think they'll be very similar, right? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Any other questions, suggestions, comments with respect to this tool or the support that John and his team bring to the table? Okay, excellent. Next item on our agenda is a little report out of the progress of the districting task force. Lauren and I met with the co-chairs of the redistricting task force this morning, and it sounds to me like they have some subgroups who are working on putting together maps in a couple of different ways, assembling new school districts that center around our career and technical center catchment areas, playing with maps that center on counties. They also have a group, I think, who's working on school districts that would focus around the regional high school and all of the sending middle and elementary schools that go with these regional high schools. So they're really still working on a number of different ways of putting together new school district boundaries. It doesn't sound to me like they will have anything particularly solid or actionable for us until mid to late November. Their timeline, in the most ideal sense, is to propose some things that the legislature could be considering in January, but the real start date or the real go time for this ward apportionment group really can't start until we know what those new school districts are going to look like. So we can begin to work with creating wards when they have a couple of solid proposals that they're centering around. But again, they don't believe that they'll have anything until sometime mid to late November. And so what I wanted to understand from you, oh yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Is there any way that this is on the table for March of 2026 town meeting and school voting? Not that, okay, phew, okay,
Yeah,
a lot better now.
yeah.
Good, thank you.
There are a lot of conversations swirling about when the first elections would happen for these new school districts. The most aggressive of those has been a proposal that there would be an off-cycle November election in 27, but I don't think that is likely. But again, the legislature is going to do what they feel the people of Vermont are telling them to do. And so we need to be prepared to act as expediently as possible when they figure out what their timeline is. I've been really clear with the legislature in testimony that we gave during this past legislative session, and I will continue to keep an eye on proposals that come in the 2026 legislative session. But it is imperative that we have at least a 6 to 8 month run up time from finalized districts and wards to any election, because we have to build those wards within our election management system. We have to educate the public on what your new school district is. We have to educate potential candidates on how you file to be on the November ballot to run for one of these new school board seats. And then we have to educate the clerks on, what does this mean for how we will report out our election night results in these new school districts. And so I will continue to insist that the legislature, just be very cognizant of the run-up time that is necessary to do all of those things to run a clean election for new school board members. Marlon.
Hey, Sarah, not to get too deep in the weeds here, but had conversations with our reps locally about that, because I'm like, to do an off-cycle election in November when there's no other elections going on is a lot more work for all of you, a lot more work to try to get people to come out and vote. And it costs a lot of money when the big push they've been talking about is trying to save money in schools. So
yes,
I have this conversation a lot of times that if you're going to do this, especially when every other school election is always in the spring, whether it's March or April, it's going to be hard to get people their heads wrapped around that there. And I think the concern you see is a lot of work to be done, and then a lot of folks don't get a chance to come out and vote because they're expecting a vote in an off year in November. So
exactly.
I will continue on our board side to continue to work to ask those questions and push that there, because I think, again, like you said, is a very aggressive timeline. And I think, again, trying to get something done just for the sake of getting it done and then not having folks being represented properly, I think would do more harm than good, and will be a lot of wasted time, effort, and money for all of you to create this election. So just want to put that out there, because I understand, like, again, I'm happy to hear, again, from you, for everybody else that is concerned of trying to do an election in 27 in November, because again, like I said, there's nothing else around that. So it'd be just standing by itself alone, and then to put all those poor board members off cycle from everybody else in
Right.
how we run schools historically here in Vermont.
Yes, we can do it fast or we can do it well. I would recommend we try to do it well.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Lauren?
I just wanted to add that with the November election, moving the election to November, this would be a universal vote by mail election, meaning every voter in Vermont would get a ballot, which adds complexity on our side in terms of printing and mailing. So just to underscore what the secretary was saying in terms of timing, we want to make sure that we have enough time, the right time, to get people their ballots.
Great. Any other questions about the landscape? All right. So before we jump to talking for a moment about a future meeting schedule, I wanted to ask you all, is there information, are there presentations that I can bring to this committee that will help you feel more prepared to begin doing this work whenever we see some reconfigured school districts? Do you have any information that you want to have access to? Are there any requests for agenda items for upcoming meetings that come to mind? And feel free to send me your thoughts after the fact if you don't have any ideas right now. Mark?
Well, I think, I agree with the fact that we're not going to have redistricting maps for a while. Both Edie and Martine spoke to the regional meetings for VSBA last night, and I know both of them, so I've been keeping touch. But what I think we could do in the interim is a lot of the 30,000 foot, like what would be optimal sizes? What's the benefits of a 5-person board versus a 15-person board? What is the difference between an at-large board or specific municipalities voting for their board member? Had other notes. What do we want to commingle a vote, or does each municipality have to vote for its own? Just all those kinds of little questions, so that when we do have a map, we have some of the basics that even if we haven't agreed that a 5 or a 12 is the better, at least we know the pros and cons of each of those. And one thing you mentioned was having an odd number is better. I don't think it really matters, because if you have a 12-member board and it's a 6-6 vote, the motion dies because it's not 50% plus 1. 50% isn't enough to bump it over. So a tie doesn't hurt anything. It's nicer if you can have a clean, 7-6 vote, but you can go even numbers. But those are just initial thoughts.
Yeah. Great. Well, we can certainly try to put together an agenda and some presentations on board mechanics, ideal size, and some of the potential impacts of having at-large members versus single member districts within a school board. So I can do some research on finding some folks who could come in and share some information on those ideas. Any other suggestions or things that you'd like to know more about? Okay, so seeing none, the last item on our agenda is to talk about a future meeting schedule. And given that we don't expect to be able to begin to see actionable school district maps until late November, I wanted to propose that we try to convene the first week of November to do a little more of this background, orientation to school boards and at-large versus single-member districts. I think we could also spend a little bit of time hearing from folks who've been deeply involved in the Legislative Apportionment Board to, just to sort of go over some of the basic principles of apportionment in that context. What we're doing here is creating, a completely new entity in the way we structure ourselves in Vermont around our school districts. So, it's not a one-to-one parallel to say legislative apportionment happens this way, therefore school district ward apportionment has to happen that way, because when you look at the range of different school districts and school board sizes and number of voters per school board member, it runs the gamut. There's just, it's a very nice mosaic of different ways of organizing school boards currently. But it could be, I think, valuable for us to do a review of how the legislative apportionment process works. So I would propose that we try to find a date in that first week of November to do some more of this background and understanding. And at that point, maybe we'll have a better sense from the task force about how their redistricting process is looking. Does that sound workable for everyone? Okay, so does anybody have a suggestion on time of day, day of the week? If you have a standing meeting that means Tuesdays don't work, please do let me know that. If you have any other preferences for times or days during that first week of November, please let me know.
Well, we all seem to be able to make it to the first Wednesday at 10 o'clock right now. If that works, then it could be the first Wednesday at 10 o'clock in November.
There we go.
Yeah, works for me
I haven't
too.
looked at my calendar yet, but I bet I can adjust things and make that work on my end. So let's pencil that in for now, and I will be back in touch once I've confirmed that. And again, if you have any other thoughts or suggestions of resources that we should put up on our working group page, on the Secretary of State's site, any other information we should link to. If you have any other ideas that you want to ask John and the VCGI folks about, feel free to reach out. And if you have other suggestions for me for things that I could put on the agenda for that November meeting that would help us do our work, please don't hesitate to reach out. Lauren.
Just a pesky reminder that we are a public body, so don't email. We should refrain from engaging in group discussion on email. If you're emailing us, you should email Sarah and myself, or Sarah and myself and Brian, or Sarah. We'll get the information, but we'll distribute information as we see fit, but we should not engage in substantial conversations as a group on email. And I'm sorry to do that, but we just need to remember that as we move forward.
Yes, thank you, Lauren. All right, any other questions, suggestions? Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining this group. It's exciting to think that we can have this impact on the future of our school governance structure, and I'm honored to be doing this work with all of you, and look forward to seeing you all again in November, if not sooner. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Take care. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.